Sometimes the people who never text first aren't the cold ones you think they are. They're not heartless. They're not playing games. They're just tired. Tired of being the one who always starts the conversation, the one who always cares a little more, the one who always holds the weight of connection on their shoulders. They've learned that silence is safer than reaching out and feeling unseen. They've learned that hey can sometimes echo back into nothingness, and that hurts more than being quiet. So they don't text first, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. If you've ever found yourself staring at your phone, waiting for a name to pop up, that familiar name that used to appear so easily away, and you stop yourself from typing because you think, maybe this time they'll message me first. You know that ache, that small, invisible ache that lives somewhere between your chest and your throat. That's not ego, that's self-preservation. People who don't text first, they're usually the ones who have texted too many times before. They remember the double text that went unanswered, the dry replies, the seen status that never turned into a response. They remember the laughter that used to exist in those chats and the sudden coldness that followed. They're not ignoring you. They're protecting themselves from another disappointment. You see, psychology has a way of explaining this. There's something called reciprocity anxiety. It happens when someone becomes afraid that their effort won't be returned, that their care will be taken for granted. Their brain begins to associate reaching out with rejection. The nervous system starts remembering that sting, that feeling of being unimportant, and it says, don't do it again, so they don't. And maybe you look at them and think they're distant, maybe you think they've changed, but what if they're just wounded? What if every silence they give you is a quiet scream saying, please notice me without me having to ask for it again? Some people text first because they believe connection is worth fighting for. Others stop texting first because they've fought too many silent battles where the other person didn't even show up. When I talk to people like this, people who hold back, I often see a pattern. They overthink everything. What if they're busy? What if I'm annoying? What if they're just done with me? So they wait. They wait for proof that they still matter. And the longer they wait, the heavier the silence gets. But here's what's heartbreaking. Sometimes both people are waiting. Two people, both overthinking, both scared to text first, both missing each other, and both pretending they don't. It's tragic, isn't it? Two people who could have shared something beautiful, letting ego, fear, and insecurity kill the bond silently. That's the modern loneliness. Everyone's talking about missing each other, but no one's brave enough to say it first. If you're the kind of person who doesn't text first anymore, I know you've probably convinced yourself that if someone truly cares, they'll show it. You don't want to chase. You want to be chosen. You've already played the part of the chaser, the initiator, the one who makes others feel wanted, but who made you feel wanted? That's where the exhaustion comes from. You can't pour from a heart that's never refilled. Let me tell you something from a psychological standpoint. Human beings crave validation, not the shallow kind, but the kind that says, I see you, you matter. When that validation disappears, our self-worth gets tangled up in the silence. We begin to measure our value in how fast someone replies, how often they check in, how much enthusiasm they show. And when that starts fading, we begin to protect ourselves by withdrawing. Not because we stopped caring, but because we can't afford to keep caring alone. Sometimes it's not even about the other person. Sometimes it's about old wounds, emotional conditioning. Maybe they grew up always having to prove they were worthy of attention. Maybe they were the kid who texted friends first, who made plans first, who always feared being left out. Over time, they built a quiet rule. If they care, they'll come to me. It's a defense mechanism, one that feels like strength, but is often just loneliness wearing armor. And, what's ironic, they'll sit there scrolling through your profile, rewatching old messages, thinking, maybe I should say something, and then stop, because they can't bear another ghost conversation. They'd rather be the quiet one than the one begging for attention that never comes. But inside, they're not cold, they're overflowing, they replay moments. They notice when you view their story. They notice the songs you post, the things you share that sound a little too familiar. They analyze them like secret messages, even when they're not. Because deep down, they still hope. Psychologically speaking, hope is stubborn. Even when the mind says move on, the heart keeps asking, but what if? So they wait. They wait in silence, hoping someone breaks it. If you've ever known someone like that, or been someone like that, I want you to know you're not weak for wanting connection. You're just someone who learned that silence hurts less when it's your choice. But here's the hard truth. Sometimes, by protecting yourself, you end up losing the very thing you wanted to save, because relationships are built on effort, uneven, messy, human effort. And someone has to take the first step. Ask yourself, are you silent because you truly don't care or because you're scared they? Most people who don't text first, they're not trying to manipulate. They're longing for reciprocity. They just want to feel that someone somewhere thinks of them first. And maybe you're watching this right now, thinking about a name, someone you miss, someone you stopped texting. Maybe you're waiting for them to appear on your screen again. But what if they're waiting for you too? What if they're watching this same video, thinking the same thing? Wouldn't that be tragic? Two people perfectly capable of caring, lost in a battle of who texts first? Maybe that's what modern love has become, a competition of who can act like they care less. A generation terrified of looking vulnerable. A world full of people who type long messages, then delete them. Who check last seen but never type hi. The psychology behind that is fear. Pure, unspoken fear of rejection. Because rejection, to the human brain, lights up the same area as physical pain. So people avoid it at all costs. They avoid it even if it means losing connection. Even if it means living with regret. But you don't have to. You can be the one who chooses courage over pride. You can be the one who says, hey, I've been thinking about you. And if they don't reply, then at least you know you won't spend weeks wondering if silence means something. You'll be free. Because the truth is, silence can be louder than words, but it can also be misunderstood. So before you call someone cold or distant for not texting first, remember there's a story behind that quiet. Maybe they're healing, maybe they're scared, maybe they're just waiting for a sign that they still matter. And if that person is you, if you're the one who never texts first, I see you. I know the strength it takes to stay silent. I know how much you want someone to break through your quiet walls, but sometimes healing begins when you risk a little bit of pain again. Because love, friendship, connection, they don't start with ego, they start with vulnerability. So go ahead. Text first, not because you're weak, but because you're brave enough to care again. And if they don't reply, remember, you didn't lose anything. You just learned who's worth your silence. Maybe that's what growing up really is, understanding that silence can protect you, but it can also imprison you. So the next time you find yourself staring at that blank chat box, feeling your fingers hover over the keyboard, just ask yourself, what hurts more? Sending the message, or wondering forever what could have happened if you did, and then type it. Because maybe, just maybe, they were waiting for you too.